Greetings and felicitations, New York Comic-Con. 'Tis I,
Under the blinding studio lights, a man in a navy suit adjusts his tie and flashes a knowing grin. The audience erupts in laughter. But for Stephen Colbert, every joke hides a memory, and every smile carries a shadow. To America, he's the late-night truth-teller, the sharp-tongued satirist who turns politics into punchlines. But long before The Late Show and the Colbert Report, he was just a quiet boy from Charleston, South Carolina. A boy who learned too early that the world could break your heart. At age 10, Colbert lost his father and two brothers in a plane crash. That tragedy could have destroyed him. Instead, it forged something remarkable. A resilience built from pain, a faith born of loss, and a wit sharpened by survival. Years later, that same boy would walk onto television screens across the world, armed not with anger, but with laughter. He would challenge power, question truth, and teach a divided nation how to laugh again. So how did tragedy give birth to one of America's greatest comedic minds? This is the story of Stephen Colbert, the man who turned grief into genius and comedy into truth. Stephen Tyrone Colbert was born on May 13, 1964, in Washington, D.C., the youngest of 11 children in a large Irish Catholic family. His father, Dr. James Colbert, was a physician and academic who served as vice president of the Medical University of South Carolina. His mother, Lorna, was a woman of quiet strength and deep faith, the anchor of a household filled with energy, debate, and devotion. When Stephen was young, the Colberts moved to Charleston, South Carolina, settling into a life of Southern calm and Catholic tradition. Yet beneath the charm of the Low Country, his world would soon be torn apart. In 1974, tragedy struck when an Eastern Airlines flight crashed outside Charlotte, killing his father and two older brothers, Peter and Paul. Stephen was just 10 years old. The loss froze time. Overnight, laughter vanished from the Colbert home. His mother, already burdened with raising 9 children alone, found solace in faith. Stephen, the youngest and most sensitive, withdrew into books, music, and imagination. He devoured Tolkien, sought comfort in The Lord of the Rings, and found refuge in the voices of radio and fantasy worlds where tragedy could be rewritten. His mother never spoke much about grief, but her endurance became his blueprint for survival. She told him, "You can be broken, but you must not be bitter." Those words stayed with him for life. Colbert's childhood was shaped by silence, but also by resilience. He learned to laugh not because life was funny, but because laughter was a way to keep it from breaking him. The boy from Charleston grew up knowing that humor and faith were not opposites, but armor, the twin shields that would one day carry him onto the biggest stage in America. By the time Stephen Colbert entered his 20s, the quiet boy from Charleston had transformed into a young man searching for purpose. After briefly studying philosophy, he transferred to Northwestern University, where he found his true calling: performance. In the theater department, he discovered that comedy wasn't just entertainment. It was revelation. Behind every laugh, there was a chance to speak truth. After graduation, he moved to Chicago, the heartbeat of American improv, with little more than ambition and uncertainty. He joined the legendary Second City training program, the same crucible that forged comedy greats like Bill Murray and John Belushi. But while others chased punchlines, Colbert chased meaning. He was the quiet observer, the thinker who turned satire into storytelling. He worked nights at a box office to pay rent, writing sketches by day, and performing for small, often indifferent audiences. Yet he refused to give up. One night he met Amy Sedaris and Paul Dinello, two creative spirits who matched his odd brilliance. Together, they built something special. Exit 57, a sketch show that blended absurd humor with sharp social critique. Though short-lived, Exit 57 earned critical praise and placed Colbert on the radar of Comedy Central executives. That led to his next step: The Dana Carvey Show, a chaotic short-run series that gave him a taste of the brutal unpredictability of television. Then, in 1997, fate called. Jon Stewart took over The Daily Show, and Colbert was invited to join as a correspondent. His on-screen persona, the overly confident, pompous newsman, became a revelation. He wasn't just reporting fake news, he was dissecting real hypocrisy. In the glare of that satirical spotlight, Stephen Colbert found his voice. It wasn't just comedy anymore. It was truth, disguised as laughter. And America was about to notice. By the early 2000s, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart had become the pulse of political satire, and Stephen Colbert was its sharpest weapon. With his slick hair, commanding stare, and deadpan arrogance, he delivered fake news so convincingly that many viewers didn't realize how real the message beneath it was. He embodied a new kind of comedy, one that didn't just mock the system, but dissected it. In 2005, Comedy Central handed him his own stage, The Colbert Report. It was supposed to be a parody of conservative punditry, a satire of the blustering news anchors who filled cable airwaves with ego and outrage. But it became something much bigger. Colbert turned self-righteousness into art. His character, Stephen Colbert, wasn't just a joke. He was a mirror held up to America's political absurdity. Each night, he walked a tightrope between character and conscience. He interviewed politicians who didn't realize he was mocking them, sparred with authors and pundits, and created viral moments that blurred the line between performance and protest. His word, truthiness, the idea that something feels true even if it isn't, perfectly captured the spirit of a post-fact age. Then came 2006. At the White House Correspondents' Dinner, standing just a few feet from President George W. Bush, Colbert delivered a 20-minute roast that stunned Washington. The room was silent. He looked power in the eye and made a nation laugh and think. Overnight, he became a symbol of courage, intellect, and fearless satire. Viewers didn't just tune in for jokes. They came for catharsis, for a nightly reminder that laughter could be resistance. The Colbert Report became a cultural phenomenon, winning Emmys and a devoted following known as Colbert Nation. In a time of noise and spin, Stephen Colbert became the voice of ironic truth, a performer who exposed lies by pretending to believe them. His rise was not fueled by fame or vanity, but by purpose, to prove that comedy could be the sharpest instrument of honesty in a dishonest world. By the late 2000s, Stephen Colbert wasn't just a comedian, he was a cultural force. The Colbert Report had transcended satire to become a nightly ritual for millions of Americans who sought clarity through laughter. His fake news persona was so convincing, so razor-sharp, that he became part of the very political machinery he mocked. Senators quoted him. Presidents feared him. Fans adored him. At his peak, Colbert stood at the intersection of humor and history. His show won multiple Emmy and Peabody Awards, and Time magazine named him one of the 100 most influential people in the world. He testified before Congress, in character, about immigration reform, turning political theater into performance art. He ran a fake presidential campaign in 2008, raising real money and real questions about democracy itself. But behind the irony was sincerity. Colbert wasn't mocking belief, he was defending it. His Catholic upbringing, moral compass, and love for language infused his satire with depth. He wasn't just exposing hypocrisy, he was holding America accountable to its better self. His humor reached beyond politics. He raised millions for charity through Colbert Nation, funded classrooms across America, and inspired countless young comedians to see wit as a weapon of change. Even NASA named a treadmill after him, Colbert, cementing his place among cultural icons who could bend reality with a joke. Yet as his influence soared, the weight of maintaining perfection grew. Every episode had to be smarter, sharper, braver. He was no longer the young performer chasing laughs. He was a symbol of integrity in an age of spin. The line between Stephen the man and Colbert, the character, blurred until they nearly became one. Still under the spotlight, he never faltered. Each night he reminded his audience that laughter could be both rebellion and redemption. In a media landscape addicted to outrage, he gave people something rarer: perspective. At the height of his fame, Stephen Colbert proved that truth could still get the last laugh if you were clever enough to disguise it as comedy. At the height of his success, Stephen Colbert seemed untouchable, the intellectual jester who outsmarted politics, media, and even fame itself. But behind the laughter, a quieter battle was unfolding. After years of playing a satirical version of himself, Colbert began to lose sight of where the performance ended and where the person began. The Stephen Colbert of the Colbert Report was brash, egotistical, unflinchingly confident. Everything the real Colbert was not. Maintaining that character 5 nights a week for nearly a decade became an emotional grind. He often stayed late into the night perfecting scripts, worried not about being funny, but about being right. He once admitted, "I felt trapped inside my own armor." Offstage, the years of pressure began to weigh heavily. Fame brought admiration, but also scrutiny. Every misstep was magnified, every silence questioned. For a man who valued sincerity, living inside a parody of himself was exhausting. Then came 2013, the year everything changed. His mother, Lorna Colbert, passed away at age 92. She had been his spiritual anchor, the person who taught him to see suffering as grace. Her loss shattered him. He took time off from the show, and when he returned, his tone had changed. The satire was still sharp, but now it carried something deeper. Compassion. When the Colbert Report ended in 2014, it wasn't just the end of a television era, it was the death of a persona. For years, Colbert had been his armor against grief and fear. Now stepping away from it felt like losing a part of himself. The world saw triumph. He felt uncertainty. Who was Stephen Colbert without the character? Could he be funny as himself? Without irony? Without the mask? For the first time in decades, the man who made a nation laugh had to rediscover his own voice. The satirist who built his empire on truth was about to confront the hardest truth of all, the one that lay within. When CBS announced that Stephen Colbert would replace David Letterman as host of The Late Show in 2015, the world celebrated. But Colbert hesitated. For the first time in nearly 20 years, he would walk onto a stage as himself. No armor, no character, just Stephen. The transition was rough. Early ratings were lukewarm. Critics called him too restrained, and audiences missed the biting satire of the Colbert Report. Without the bombastic persona, some thought he'd lost his edge. But what they didn't see was the transformation happening behind the curtain. Colbert wasn't trying to outshock or outshout anyone. He was rebuilding something deeper, a connection based on sincerity. Slowly, the real Stephen emerged. The kind, curious, and spiritually reflective man his friends had always known. He talked about grief, faith, and the strange beauty of resilience. He laughed more freely, listened more closely, and allowed vulnerability to take center stage. Then came the political storm of 2016. As America fractured, Colbert's voice, once dismissed as too soft, became the one millions turned to. The Late Show surged to #1, not because he mocked, but because he understood. His empathy, wrapped in wit, became his superpower. He used his platform not just for laughs, but for healing. He welcomed scientists, priests, and activists. He turned conversations into reflections and interviews into moments of truth. Stephen Colbert had been reborn, not as a character, but as a conscience. In losing his persona, he found his purpose again. The boy who once hid behind books and comedy now stood before the world, unmasked, showing that kindness could still be powerful and honesty still revolutionary. This wasn't a reinvention. It was a return to himself. Today, Stephen Colbert stands not just as a late-night host, but as a storyteller whose influence stretches far beyond comedy. His journey, from a grieving child to a cultural icon, has reshaped what it means to be both funny and fearless. Through The Daily Show, The Colbert Report, and The Late Show, he transformed satire into a mirror for the soul of America. His humor never punched down. It lifted, challenging hypocrisy but always reminding audiences of shared humanity. Where others sought outrage, Colbert offered understanding. Where cynicism ruled, he chose faith. He has inspired a generation of truth-tellers, comedians like John Oliver, Samantha Bee, and Hassan Minhaj, who follow his path of using laughter as a form of civic duty. His term, truthiness, entered the dictionary, but his real legacy lies in the courage to be compassionate in a divided world. Beyond television, Colbert's impact ripples through philanthropy and education. He's raised millions for charity, supported teachers nationwide, and encouraged empathy through his Catholic worldview, a faith not of dogma, but of love. Even in his most satirical moments, there's a quiet grace, a reminder that intelligence and kindness need not be opposites. What makes Colbert timeless is not his wit, but his warmth. He showed that comedy can question power without losing soul, that laughter can coexist with loss, and that truth, when spoken with love, can still change minds. Stephen Colbert's legacy isn't written in punchlines or awards. It lives in the millions who found comfort, courage, or even forgiveness in his words. He didn't just entertain a nation, he taught it how to laugh at pain, and in doing so, how to survive it. The lights dim. The band fades. Stephen Colbert sits at his desk, hands folded, a soft smile playing on his lips. After decades of laughter, loss, and redemption, the man behind the jokes has found peace in the very thing that once broke him: truth. He has spent a lifetime turning pain into punchlines and fear into wisdom. From a 10-year-old boy in Charleston to one of the most beloved figures in American culture, his story is not about fame, but about faith. Faith in people, in love, and in the healing power of laughter. Stephen Colbert reminds us that comedy is not an escape from pain, it is a way through it. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the act of standing on stage, night after night, and finding light in the darkness. In the end, his greatest performance isn't a sketch or a monologue. It's his life, a testament to the idea that even in grief, there is grace. And even in laughter, there is truth. Because as his mother once told him, "If you can laugh, you can live."